All right, so today we're diving into some pretty heavy stuff.
Yeah.
We're going to be looking into the disappearance of Madeleine McCann.
Okay.
A case that's just haunted, I think, a lot of us for a really long time.
It has.
And we have your research here, a mix of articles and your own notes.
Right.
So are you ready to kind of unpack this with me?
Absolutely. This case, it really does feel like it holds a mirror up to some of our deepest fears as parents, doesn't it?
Totally.
The idea of a child just vanishing while on vacation.
Yeah.
It's chilling.
It's chilling. It happened back on May 3rd, 2007.
Right.
The McCanns, Kate and Gerry, and their 3 kids, including 3-year-old Madeleine, were on holiday in Praia da Luz, Portugal. Kind of that, picture-perfect beach town resort life.
And that contrast just makes what happened all the more jarring.
Yeah.
The family was staying in a ground floor apartment, part of a group of friends vacationing together. That evening, they opted for dinner at the resort's tapas restaurant.
So this is where it gets, I think, really unnerving for a lot of people.
Yeah.
The restaurant was only about 50 meters from their apartment.
Right.
And the group was checking on the kids every half hour or so.
It's fascinating here, that sense of, I guess, perceived safety within a resort environment.
Right.
You're lulled into this kind of false sense of security.
Yes.
Tragically, in this case, that system wasn't enough.
Yeah, I think that's what's so scary for a lot of parents listening is like,
Yeah.
How do you balance enjoying your vacation
Right.
with that constant parental vigilance?
Exactly.
And then around 10 p.m., Kate McCann goes to check on the children, and Madeleine is gone.
Window open.
Window open.
Betters raise.
I can't even imagine.
It's a parent's worst nightmare.
It's every parent's worst nightmare.
And in those crucial moments after a disappearance,
Yeah.
every single minute counts.
Oh, absolutely.
The initial response by the Portuguese police, however, was marred by missteps.
Okay.
The crime scene wasn't immediately secured properly, and with the influx of people, there was a high risk of evidence contamination.
So looking back, how much do you think those early missteps impacted the entire investigation?
Right.
Is that something that could have been salvaged later on, or was it a fatal blow from the start?
That's a crucial question.
Yeah.
And one that has been debated endlessly.
Yeah.
While it's impossible to say for certain,
Of course.
some experts argue that a more controlled initial response could have significantly altered the trajectory of the case.
I remember back when this was all over the news, just the sheer volume of coverage was overwhelming.
Oh, yeah.
Madeleine's image was everywhere.
Absolutely. The media frenzy surrounding the case was unprecedented.
It really was.
It was a double-edged sword, of course.
Yeah.
On one hand, it helped raise awareness
Sure.
and potentially generated leads. But on the other, it created immense pressure on investigators
Right.
and may have skewed public perception.
Do you think the media attention, especially in those early stages, had a negative impact on the investigation?
It's hard to say for sure. Yeah. But the sheer volume of speculation and often unfounded theories circulating in the media undoubtedly added another layer of complexity to the case.
And then just a few months after Madeleine vanished, the Portuguese police named Kate and Gerry McCann themselves as suspects, or arguidos as they called it.
That's right.
It was a shocking turn of events.
Really was.
Being named an arguido in the Portuguese legal system means you are officially a suspect,
Okay.
but not necessarily charged.
Interesting.
It carries a significant weight and stigma.
Yeah.
And in this case, the theory put forward was that Madeleine might have died in the apartment and her parents were somehow involved.
I remember thinking at the time how utterly devastating that must have been for them, already dealing with the unimaginable loss of their child.
Right.
And then to be accused.
And this is where the psychological impact of such an accusation comes into play.
Yeah.
The McCanns were already victims. Now they were being further victimized by the very system that was supposed to be protecting them.
Right. The psychological toll of that, coupled with the constant media scrutiny, must have been immense.
And even though they were later cleared, the damage was already done.
Exactly.
It's a stark reminder of how quickly public opinion can shift, especially in these high-profile cases like this.
Absolutely.
But amidst all of this, the investigation was still ongoing.
Right.
There were so many theories being thrown around: stranger abduction, possible trafficking, burglary gone wrong. It was just a whirlwind.
And each of these theories had its own set of challenges for investigators.
Yeah.
Let's take the stranger abduction theory, for example.
Okay.
There were several reported sightings of a man carrying a child near the apartment.
Right.
But with conflicting descriptions and the inherent unreliability of eyewitness accounts, especially in a situation as chaotic as this,
Oh, for sure.
it becomes incredibly difficult to verify.
And how did investigators approach those international leads, particularly when it came to potential trafficking rings? Did the Portuguese authorities collaborate effectively with other countries, or were there breakdowns in communication?
That's a crucial point.
Yeah.
International cooperation in missing person cases, particularly when child trafficking is suspected, is paramount.
Absolutely.
And in the early days of the Madeleine McCann investigation, there were criticisms leveled at the level of communication and coordination between Portuguese and British authorities.
So it sounds like there were multiple layers of complexity at play here.
Yeah.
The initial missteps, the media frenzy, the McCanns being wrongly accused, and the challenges of pursuing different lines of inquiry, especially those that crossed international borders.
Absolutely.
There's a lot to unpack.
It really is, and it highlights the crucial need for a multifaceted approach in these kinds of investigations.
Right.
Not just focusing on the forensic evidence,
Right.
but also understanding the psychological pressures on those involved, the media's influence, and the complexities of international collaboration.
Absolutely. It's like solving a puzzle with half the pieces missing. And constantly shifting perspectives.
Right.
So where do we go from here?
Right.
What were some of the key turning points in the investigation after those initial chaotic months?
Well, significant development came in 2013.
Okay.
When Scotland Yard launched their own investigation, Operation Grange.
Okay.
It was a fresh pair of eyes on the case.
Right.
And their approach differed from the Portuguese investigation in several key ways.
Okay, so what made Operation Grange different? Was it just about having a new team look at the evidence, or were there specific techniques or technologies that they were employing?
It was a combination of factors.
Okay.
First, they had access to advanced forensic technologies that weren't available in 2007.
Right.
They re-examined DNA samples, analyzed phone records, and even employed ground-penetrating radar to search areas of interest.
So technology playing a crucial role, which makes sense given how much forensic science has advanced in recent years.
Precisely. Operation Grange also brought a different investigative mindset. They were more open to exploring various theories, including those that had been dismissed by the Portuguese police.
Interesting.
They also worked more closely with international law enforcement agencies, recognizing the potential for cross-border connections in the case.
And did that lead to any significant breakthroughs? I know they released those e-fits of potential suspects, but did those ever pan out?
It's interesting you mentioned those e-fits.
Yeah.
They generated a lot of public interest at the time.
Yeah, they did.
But ultimately didn't lead to any arrests.
Okay.
However, Operation Grange did manage to narrow down the timeline of events, identify new witnesses, and shed light on certain inconsistencies in previous accounts.
I guess that speaks to the importance of revisiting cold cases with a fresh perspective and new tools.
It does.
But still, no definitive answers for the McCanns.
Sadly, no, and I can only imagine the emotional toll this must have taken on them.
Yeah.
To have their hopes raised with each new development.
Right.
Only to be met with more questions, more dead ends.
It's just unfathomable to live with that level of uncertainty for years on end.
And all while they were still battling those lingering accusations.
Right.
The whispers and doubts that persisted despite being officially cleared.
Yeah.
It's a testament to their strength and resilience that they never gave up hope, that they continued to advocate for their daughter and keep her case in the public eye.
They really have been remarkable throughout this whole ordeal.
They have.
But even with Operation Grange and all the renewed efforts, the case remained a mystery for many years. And then in 2020, there was a major development.
Right.
German authorities announced that they had identified Christian Bruckner as a prime suspect.
Yes, this was a significant shift in the investigation.
It really was.
Bruckner, a convicted sex offender, was living in the Praia da Luz area when Madeleine disappeared.
Okay.
His phone records placed him near the Ocean Club that night.
I remember when that news broke, it felt like there was finally a real possibility of getting answers. But she hasn't been charged right.
That's correct. German authorities have been very tight-lipped about the specific evidence they have against Bruckner.
Of course.
Citing the ongoing nature of the investigation.
Understandable.
However, they've stated publicly that they believe he is responsible for Madeleine's disappearance.
I find it fascinating that Bruckner wasn't on the radar for so many years.
Right.
What eventually led investigators to him? Was it something that came out of Operation Grange, or was it a completely separate lead?
It's a combination of factors.
Okay.
There were some initial connections to Bruckner in the early days of the investigation, but those weren't fully pursued at the time.
Oh, wow.
Then, in the years that followed, he was convicted of other crimes, including sexual assault and drug offenses, which may have raised his profile in law enforcement databases.
So it sounds like a bit of luck or perhaps bad luck on his part, combined with some good old-fashioned detective work.
Right.
But what kind of evidence would investigators be looking for to solidify their case against him? After all this time, are we talking DNA eyewitness accounts or something else entirely?
Well, that's where things get tricky.
Yeah.
After 16 years, physical evidence can be extremely difficult to come by.
Right.
DNA degrades, memories fade,
yeah,
and potential witnesses might be unreliable or even deceased.
Or are we talking more about circumstantial evidence?
Right.
Building a case based on his presence in the area, his criminal history, things like that?
It's likely a combination of factors.
Okay.
German authorities have mentioned having concrete evidence, but haven't disclosed the specifics.
Right.
It could be a combination of phone records, witness statements, perhaps even evidence recovered from Bruckner's belongings or vehicles.
It's almost like trying to solve a puzzle in a fading photograph.
Right.
You have some pieces, but the details are blurry.
Yeah.
And you're constantly questioning whether you're seeing the full picture.
It's perfect analogy.
Yeah.
And in a case like this where time has passed and memories have been filtered through so many different lenses,
right,
the media, public opinion, personal biases, the truth can become incredibly elusive.
And that brings us to another aspect of this case that I think is worth exploring.
Okay.
The role of memory and perception after all these years. How reliable can witness accounts really be?
That's a key question in any long-term investigation. Memory is a malleable thing.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to traumatic events.
Right.
Witnesses may unintentionally embellish details, conflate different memories.
Right.
Or even be influenced by information they've encountered after the fact.
It's like a game of telephone, right?
Exactly.
The more times a story is retold,
the
more distorted it can become.
Right.
And in a case that's garnered this much media attention,
absolutely,
it's hard to imagine that witnesses haven't been exposed to countless different versions of events.
Exactly. And that's where the ethical considerations surrounding media coverage come into play.
Right.
While raising awareness can be crucial in generating leads and keeping a case like this in the public eye.
Right.
It also has the potential to contaminate witness testimony and influence public perception.
Right. It's that constant tension between the need to inform and the potential for harm.
Absolutely.
And thinking back to 2007, social media wasn't nearly as pervasive as it is today.
Right.
I wonder how that would have changed things for better or worse if this case had happened now.
It's a fascinating question.
It is.
On the one hand, the reach and immediacy of social media could have been incredibly helpful in spreading information quickly and potentially reaching new witnesses.
Right.
But on the other hand, the potential for misinformation, speculation, and even online harassment would have been amplified exponentially.
And the McCanns were already dealing with so much scrutiny and judgment, even without the added layer of social media commentary.
Oh, absolutely. It's a stark reminder that these are real people with real emotions.
Yeah.
And the impact of these events extends far beyond the headlines.
It makes you think about the true cost of these mysteries.
Yeah.
The human toll that often gets lost in the narrative.
It's easy to get caught up in the puzzle.
Right.
The who-do-it aspect of it all. But at its heart, this is a story about a family shattered by loss.
Right.
And a child whose fate remains unknown.
And that sense of not knowing, that lingering uncertainty, must be the most agonizing part for the McCanns.
Absolutely. It's a wound that never fully heals.
Yeah.
And while there's always hope, there's also the realization that answers may never come.
Right.
That the truth may remain elusive.
Which brings us to you listening.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts after diving into all this?
What aspects of the case resonated most with you? Did anything surprise you, or did you find yourself questioning any of the assumptions that have been presented over the years?
I'm curious to know what stands out to you as the most compelling piece of the puzzle.
Right.
The one that leaves you wanting more.
Yeah.
Is it the initial missteps in the investigation? The whirlwind of theories and suspects? Or the psychological and emotional impact on those involved?
Because ultimately, this case is about more than just solving a crime. It's about understanding the complexities of human behavior, the limitations of memory and perception, and the enduring power of hope, even in the face of unimaginable tragedy.
It's a reminder that sometimes the most compelling mysteries are the ones that stay with us long after the headlines fade. the ones that force us to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves and the world around us.
And that's what makes this case so enduringly fascinating and ultimately so heartbreaking.
We may never know for sure what happened to Madeleine McCann, but by exploring the intricacies of this case, by engaging critically with the evidence and the various perspectives, we gain a deeper understanding of the complexities of these investigations and the enduring search for truth and justice.
And perhaps by keeping these conversations going, by raising awareness and demanding accountability, we can prevent similar tragedies from happening in the future.
I hope so.
Because every child deserves to be safe and every family deserves answers.
Beautifully said. And to you listening, we hope this deep dive has challenged your assumptions, sparked some critical thinking, and left you with a renewed appreciation for the human stories at the heart of these mysteries. Because even in the darkest of times, the search for truth and the hope for justice must never fade away.